Oh yeah, it's been a long day. Hey guys, welcome back to our second top four match. I am Regina Angley, and Brendan Lewis is still Brendan Lewis for right now.
I hope so.
That's what we call an identity crisis. But just hanging out, waiting for the players to get ready to start. So we do have for you your last top four match is going to be Chris Danzo versus James Evans. So names not unfamiliar to people
Yeah,
here.
definitely not. Both local players, both phenomenal players in their own right. I'm sure their occasions have been, or I'm sorry, their achievements, occasions. Their achievements have been told to you guys, but of course James is a former senior world champion and has multiple Masters cuts. I heard somebody talking earlier to him about how he has multiple X2 regional cuts.
Heard
like
that.
I think he's snuck into like the back end of multiple regional cuts. So always managing to play really strong schedules at regionals apparently, and his resistance was over 75% at this tournament,
impressive.
which is like pretty absurd.
That's
but
really
we
good.
saw him lose on stream round one, and then his opponent he won on stream round one, and then the person that he played went 0-1 to 6-1. So that's how your resistance gets so good.
So he played Will Vega, who did the turnaround,
right.
And so.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So anyway,
me, right?
absurd resistance to the point that James bubbled with like 72% resistance or something like that, which is ridiculous. But anyway, he is playing against Chris Danzo, who we did have on stream earlier, and is well known in the local scene, of course, has regional cuts under his belt as well. So a really strong match, and I think it's always cool where we come to these New York, New Jersey mid-season showdowns and get to see the locals go at it in top four. It's really cool.
See, it's weird because like they're locals too, so I'm like, yeah, locals, absolutely.
Well, they're locals. They're not technically my locals. My local got knocked out in top 8. Sorry, Jeremy.
Oh. Yeah, but you see the two players up there just getting ready. There's the fist bump to make sure that we're not shaking hands because it is still flu season.
Mm-hmm. It is flu season.
There is a bottle of hand sanitizer back here that I've just been like, yes. Like it's just.
Hey, you do what you got to do. Yep. Yeah, I work in healthcare. You always got to be washing your hands. Yep.
There you go, smart. But get ready to go into this match. It's been a long enough day that I'm at the point where I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna see these teams for the first time again because I've seen variants of all these Pokemon
I think it's
all
better.
day.
I always like to cast in like with the
the mindset
with ignorance. I think it's fun where you get to like project. I wonder what's gonna go. Even if you already know, even if you found out 5 hours ago, but it's always fun. A lot of these Pokemon that players have selected here, pretty standard picks. And I was talking a little bit with, I forget who it was earlier, but talking about how when you have standard selections of Pokemon, it really comes down to your item choices, your move choices. What are you like doing to, patch certain matchups to make your team a little bit different than, what players might be expecting and things of that nature. And I think both of these players have made selections that definitely change matchups against, what you would expect to be facing.
And there on your screen, guys, on your left side, James Evans with that Excadrill, Tyranitar, Rotom Heat, Gastrodon, Togekiss, and Hitmontop. And on the right, Chris Danzo with the Togekiss, Arcanine, Duraludon, Conkeldurr, Grimmsnarl, and Rotom Wash, actually.
Yeah, so again, pretty standard selections of Pokemon, and we're going to get down into, some of the moves and items that we see revealed here. I don't know if it's been called out on stream yet, but Hitmontop is kind of the mascot Pokemon that James has selected for himself, where he does use that Pokemon, I think, almost exclusively on all of his teams, and he's been using it going back into Ultra Series, I believe, so that's really interesting. So we'll get to see that from him as both players select their leads here.
Yeah, we've got Chris Danzo leading with Togekiss and Arcanine. Arcanine's Intimidate going into Excadrill and Tyranitar, the leads for James. A little bit more important onto that Excadrill, but that Sandstream from Tyranitar is going to help out that Excadrill. We did not see Mold Breaker, so it's either Sand Rush or Sand Force, I think is the other ability. But Sand Rush is a little bit more used, right?
Yeah, and definitely almost exclusively with Tyranitar. I think there was a time when you were seeing a lot of Excadrill when it didn't necessarily have Tyranitar next to it, and that's when you start to see Mold Breaker pop up a little bit. But I think Sand Rush is probably the correct choice when you do have your own way to set sand consistently.
Yeah, and these guys have been they've just been locking in really fast, those the team and now the moves, as Rotom comes into place here for that Arcanine, but we've got Excadrill being Dynamax here on James's side. A little bit difficult just because it does have that -1 to its attack thanks to that Intimidate from Arcanine leading here, but can still do a lot of damage with things like Max Steel Spike, and another Dynamax now from this time on Chris's side with that Togekiss.
Right, and Togekiss, of course, is going to be able to take attacks from Excadrill after Dynamaxing thanks to its doubled HP stat. Dynamax mechanic, and if Chris does have weakness policy, and specifically if he's weakness policy with a fire move, this could very quickly turn into a really good situation for him. But no, it's going to be Max Quake instead, as Rotom takes that by switching on top of it.
Oh yeah, and the Max Flare now from Togekiss is going to go into that extra drill, does a lot of damage, and it's actually going to rewrite that Sandstorm into Sun, so going to take away that double speed possibility there, but that Rotom switch really nice here. But Rock Slide from Tyranitar are going to go into both Pokemon, and we're going to see now there is that weakness policy activation, so that +2 would have been nice maybe a little bit earlier, you know, if you're thinking Chris, but at least now you've got that +2 to your special attack.
Yeah, this is like probably a pretty close to a worst case scenario turn for James here. A lot of really bad things happen for him. His Sand is gone, Togekiss is at +2, and most importantly, if this is a fast Togekiss and even a fast Rotom potentially, if that is an Adamant Excadrill like a lot of the Sand Rush Excadrill are, then it might not even be the fastest thing on the field anymore. But I'll eat my words immediately. There's the Steel Spike. It's still moving first.
Yeah, and Togekiss is eating that Max Steel Spike as well, as it does get hit with that super effective move, but thanks to that Intimidate from earlier helping it out. However, both Excadrill and Tyranitar get that +1 to the defense. Rotom going for Nasty Plot is going to get that
it's hard to punish right now.
Yeah, it gets that +2 to its special attack, so both of Chris's Pokemon are at plus for their special attack, making them absolutely terrifying as Max Airstream from Togekiss goes into Excadrill. Barely misses the knockout though, but does give a +1 to both of them for their speed.
Right, so that's totally fine, missing the knockout, provided Togekiss takes the Rock Slide this turn. If it doesn't, then things get to turn a little bit, but it will with enough HP. So this is a pretty scary offensive position. Given that Rotom and Togekiss have kind of a reputation from years past of being like defensive, supportive Pokemon, it's really interesting to be in a format where this is a terrifying offensive position with Togekiss and Rotom both on the field.
They've
both at
grown up.
+2 special attack, both at +1 speed, and Chris is going to get to start, you know, clicking attacks onto James's side of the field at this point.
Yeah, Chris did such a great job too, switching out that Arcanine in the beginning. But yeah, so Gastrodon comes into the field in play now in place of that Tyranitar, so at least at full HP here, but Dark Pulse is going to knock out that Excadrill.
Nice play.
Yeah, which again was at +2 there for that Rotom. So still scary Pokemon, but getting rid of the Excadrill, preserving that Tyranitar for later on. But Max Starfall now from Togekiss going into that Gastrodon, which just switched in, is that +2 still from that weakness policy. So Gastrodon's not going to have a fun time here. Does set up Misty Terrain though.
Yeah, and James gave it his best shot there. I think if he was able to catch a Hydro Pump, maybe things are a little bit different. But there was not really a need, you know, now knowing that Dark Pulse is there for Chris to make that play at all. He had a very safe play of clicking attack, a non-water attack into Excadrill given how low its HP was, and then Togekiss is free to target that slot. Regardless of what it was, it did end up being that Gastrodon, which was treated very rudely with a +2 Starfall, but of course Tyranitar wasn't going to take that any better. Yeah. And now the offensive position is the same, right? Chris's side of the field is still +1 and then +2 in special attack for both Pokemon. I think this game is pretty much over at this point.
Yeah, I was talking to Chris and he's like, either this game is going to be fast or it's going to be like really fun. And I'm like, all right, well, I was like, you can give us both. And I think like this is one of those moments though where you kind of just see immediately what your game plan is. Like the Arcanine came out as the lead, was like, I'm going to intimidate these two attackers and then get out of here. And Thunderbolt going into that Togekiss from that Rotom, it just easily picks up that knockout again. That +2 from Nasty Plot, just making Rotom really scary in terms of attack power, as Air Slash and Togekiss going for that potential flinch as well, most likely. But Rock Slide from Tyranitar are going to connect with both, and we are at least going to see that Arcanine come back, most likely, and going to give a -1 to Tyranitar. I don't know if you would want to show your last Pokemon here.
I mean, I think if he has something like Conkeldurr, he'll still bring it out just to make sure that he's not undone by something like potentially like Hydro Pump misses or what have you. But I thought it was interesting that we saw an Air Slash there instead of a Dazzling Gleam because of the potential to activate a potential weakness policy. So he was just kind of taking that variable out of the equation, not the occasion. I've misspoke the word occasion multiple times, not meaning it and intending to say different words. So we're getting to that point in the day. But anyway, he was able to seal it there by bringing Conkeldurr out onto the field. So a really clean win for Chris, who took advantage of a really good turn one and just kind of snowballed it into the rest of the game there.
That was kind of actually intense, because how do you fix that in game 2, right? Like if Rotom and Togekiss just worked out the way they did against Excadrill and Tyranitar, I guess you just switch up your lead now if you're James Evans, and you figure out another way to kind of circumvent, okay, Rotom and Togekiss together are scary, let's not let Rotom get Nasty Plot up.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to starting with a better turn one. I think turn one was really the beginning and the end of the match. Of course, we didn't necessarily have a way of knowing it at the time, but with all the things that were allowed to Togekiss on turn one, it got off a lot of damage onto Excadrill and took the Sun, and then of course it had its weakness policy activated on that turn, of course, after it got to do the Heat Wave. But Togekiss was just able to take over the game almost immediately because of the things that were afforded to it by kind of a misplay by James there. So I think it starts with making a little bit of a safer play. I think he tried to get a little big there with some of the play that he made, and if you just reel it in a little bit, of course James is a phenomenal player. I'm sure he's got this in his mind as well. Just have to play a little differently.
I think what's really interesting too is like when you lead with something like the Arcanine, it's like there's not really a wrong way to lead with that, right? You either get the Intimidate into attackers, or you have the opportunity to snarl for special attackers, and like that's the most intimidating thing about Arcanine right now is that it snarls and it just lowers special attacks.
The most intimidating thing about it isn't Intimidate?
No.
Oh, okay, well that's good to know. But yeah, Arcanine is a good Pokemon, especially it gives you the opportunity to slow down games that are starting to get away from you. So that might be something that, if James had access to it, he might want to be going in that direction to try and reel things back in a little bit. But yeah, it is a Pokemon that, there are a lot of different leads that are available on Chris's team. I think that's what you were alluding to there with the choice of Arcanine. He can go in a lot of different directions and have a lot of options available to him.
Yeah, and it's like kind of tough because at this point of the day too, I know a lot of us are like really tired. I can't imagine the people playing like the PC right now, but even like the ones who have been playing this event like all day, and like now you're in top 4, you're getting ready to play another match. One of these guys is going to play one more match after this, and at that point it's like you're thinking of so many different things, and there's like, I think once you reach sort of that mindset where you're like, okay, I'm exhausted, and then you can kind of make like simple mistakes, and I think that's something you might have to watch out for or avoid when you're at like this stage.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing that was brought up, and I think a lot of people were talking about it. I know we had Jake and I had Justin on our podcast the other day, and we were talking about it a little bit, where we call in tournament stamina, right? And we were talking a lot about it as it pertained to 10 rounds of Swiss at a regional championship, right? But these players have the potential to play 10 rounds.
Yeah.
If you made it into top 8 would have been their 8th round. So this is the 9th round for these players. And then they're going to have to play potentially a 10th if they do make it into the final. So you definitely have to call in tournament stamina, which factors in, mental acuity, memory, things like that, as well as hydration.
Yeah,
we can talk about basic bodily needs. So it looks like we have forged through our brief technical difficulties here to jump into game 2.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Chris's and James's team, like Ray, I think he led really nicely. I like Arcanine and Togekiss is just very good together, and
very
then switching
solid
into like Rotom to make sure that you don't get hit by those ground type moves just in case. I think the pressure is on James to kind of adjust, right? Because he's sitting nicely here.
Yeah, I think he has to very clearly has to find a better game plan for dealing with Togekiss. You could kind of see the way that he played that turn 1. It was very hesitant to go for damage onto Togekiss for fear of activating the weakness policy, and we saw it kind of happen a little bit more incidentally anyway when he rock slided into Togekiss. But it seemed kind of like the Max Quake play was kind of born of a little bit of hesitance to go for that Steel Spike into Togekiss, knowing that it will take it and it will be an incredibly scary Pokemon to try and play against.
And we've got a switch up all around here as Duraludon and Rotom washes the lead for Chris, and James actually going for Togekiss and Hitmontop, so the Intimidate is on the other side, and so is the Togekiss for turn 1. We did see the Intimidate go into both Pokemon, but again, most Duraludon are specially trained, and Rotom, if it uses a physical attack, is a choice sometimes, but not super important in this moment. So like you had said, James decided to, have Hitmontop as like his Pokemon of choice. We are going to get that Dynamax turn 1, and this most likely be that Togekiss, because Togekiss is just everyone's favorite Pokemon of Dynamax. You can't really go wrong with it.
It's wild to think that there was a time in the format where nobody was using offensive Dynamax Togekiss.
What was that like? When was that?
It was a different time, Regina.
And Chris actually also going for Dynamax on this turn. So it's going to be that, I want to say the Duraludon, but Rotom Wash could also be a choice there, but it is going to be Duraludon instead. So 2 of the most common Pokemon to Dynamax. And actually Duraludon is always, I don't actually think I've seen that many Duraludon today.
Yeah, it's a very strong Pokemon, especially as a Dynamax user, as a fake out into the correct slot. I think that was kind of an interesting call, given that either Pokemon could have Dynamaxed there.
And Max Starfall now from Togekiss going into Duraludon can do some pretty okay damage there, but does set
Feeling
up...
it's Assault Vest there, wow.
Yeah, and it does bring up Misty Terrain. That was actually almost no damage at all. And Duraludon going for the Max Steel Spike instead, so I can't remember if we saw what item that's not a Babiri Berry at least, but Togekiss taking that very nicely here, and we are going to get a defense rise for both Duraludon and for Rotom. And it does. Oh, there it is. I was like, there's the weakness policy. Was waiting to see. We are going to get that +2 to special attack. So both Togekiss are carrying weakness policy actually.
Yeah, 2 weakness policy Togekiss, and a little bit better of a turn 1 for James. Definitely, he did have to give up a lot of damage onto his Togekiss to get those boosts. But he does have, you know, the opportunity to knock out Rotom. He is threatening a lot of damage onto Duraludon, although I think it might actually be able to take another one. I don't know. It's hard to do math based on just the bar there. And of course, rolls factor in. But definitely a much better turn 1 for James, but I think I still prefer Chris's position here.
Yeah, I think the setting up Max Starfall is really nice, or using Max Starfall to set up the terrain is an interesting choice, but that was a lot of damage, like you said, for Togekiss, but Nasty Plot from Rotom is going to give it that +2 as well. So +2 on both sides. Rotom's just having a lot of fun going for those Nasty Plots, as Max Starfall actually is going to go into that Rotom slot. So that Nasty Plot is kind of useless for it, as it does get knocked out this turn, but that leaves Duraludon free to go for an attack here, as it goes for one more Max Steel Spike. It's another boost to its defense, and I think it's going to knock out that Togekiss. Yeah, so going to end James's Dynamax turns early, and leave Chris at +2 for that Duraludon, and the sole Dynamaxer on this side.
Right, and having that +2 is probably going to be pretty important, as it's now going to have to take a close combat from the Hitmontop. But I thought that was actually a really good turn from Chris, because, you know, looking at what he ended up doing, it was kind of like I'm going to make you choose, right? Either you're going to take the damage onto Duraludon and you're going to give me this Nasty Plot and I'll knock you out next turn, because we saw that Rotom actually was faster than Togekiss there, or you're going to take my Rotom and I'm going to knock you out anyway. So he put that Togekiss in a very difficult position, and was able to turn the position into a knockout onto Togekiss, and now we see these two Pokemon come on. The Unintimidated Conkeldurr and Rotom Heat from James' side of the field.
Yeah, but I think right now we know that Chris's Conkeldurr is also Flame Orb, but Misty Terrain is up. However, Hitmontop is switching out for that Gastrodon, and Rotom going for the Volt Switch. They're going to try to get that Intimidate back in. So really smart play. Yeah, it was a really smart play from James as well. That Conkeldurr took a lot on that turn. But Hitmontop's going to come in now, getting the Intimidate, so had switched out and went for the Volt Switch. So I love that play a lot. Gets the -1 into the Conkeldurr, and is denying that Flame Orb unless Duraludon can at least try to change up the terrain. But Hitmontop is going to take a Max Form, and just takes that very nicely as well. Does get the defense, the attack drop for both Pokemon. Gastrodon doesn't care about that at all, though.
Right, and Drain Punch from Conkeldurr, I think that was a Specs Rotom?
Yeah, a lot of damage.
Because it did a lot of damage with just a Volt Switch, and there was no Life Orb tick. So it leads me to believe that was Specs, which is really interesting. For a Pokemon that does, you know, kind of like to Dynamax, I think we saw that, well, with this Rotom, is that you lose the I know what I'm thinking of, is the Duraludon that I casted in round 7 with round 6, the Choice Scarf, where it's nice to have choice items and all, but if you're going to be consistently Dynamaxing something, you have to think about how you're basically giving away an item for the 3 most important turns of your game.
Yeah, so Togekiss coming into that field in place of Duraludon, which did end its Dynamax turns, as Conkeldurr protects itself on this turn. Hitmontop going for the Fake Out into that protected spot. Gastrodon going for Earth Power into what was Duraludon, but Togekiss is like, nope, can't touch me because I'm flying.
Yep, that's a really good switch, and this is a great position for Togekiss here to just be kind of clicking follow me over and over again, and, you know, what is it going to take? It could take potentially a Scald, maybe a close combat, but it's going to get definitely this turn to wick away attacks from that Conkeldurr, as Rotom opts to retake the field necessarily to deal with that Togekiss. And
Togekiss actually going instead for a Dazzling Gleam.
Chris is playing really well.
Really do a lot of damage onto this. Conkeldurr going for Drain Punch one more time, this time into that Rotom, which was Hitmontop. But James is trying his best to think ahead, right? Has that Hitmontop in the back to get Intimidate down into Conkeldurr. Togekiss taking that Scald, no burn potential for it as well, but now Misty Terrain is off of the field, which means that Flame Orb is back in play.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting position in the sense that I really don't know Choice Specs Rotom calcs very well, so
Not for
I
this
don't know,
generation, at least.
like I think he's definitely threatening a knockout onto Togekiss, but I wonder whether or not an overheat is enough to knock out Conkeldurr based on what we saw Volt Switch do. So I really don't know how much damage it's going to do, and I think the game could potentially hinge on what Rotom does this turn. It could, you know, potentially just Volt Switch out again, which would maybe not be such a bad thing, and could wait until things are chipped so that we don't have to play fun games with dice
guessing.
with damage. But this is a really interesting turn. I think, you know, Gastrodon maybe not doing as much as it might like to be doing right now, but a follow me from Togekiss, so he's just gonna, you know, let Rotom take a shot at it. Yeah.
So, like you said, there's that Volt Switch, so we're gonna figure out if it is gonna be enough to pick up that Togekiss.
Yeah, I would hope so.
But that means Hitmontop is coming in now, and that means we're getting an Intimidate into that Conkeldurr, which did get that boost from Flame Orb and Guts. But now you're at -1 there, and you still have Duraludon in the back for Chris, and I think James is at least trying to put himself in the best position as possible with that Hitmontop. Now you've got Fake Out potential one more time on the field as well.
All right, so I think Conkeldurr's at -2 now, -2 stages of attack, but it is going to get a Drain Punch and heal itself back up. Is that a crit? That could potentially be a crit given that it's at -2. I guess we haven't seen it. Oh, but it has a Flame Orb now.
Yeah,
okay. That's why, man, these damage calcs.
There's a lot going on the field right now.
Right, so the Scald is going to finish the turn here. I think that this has the potential to just be cleaned by Rotom here. It's going to have to get two... it might not even two. I think an Overheat into Conkeldurr followed by an Earth Power into Duraludon might be enough to take the game for James, actually. That's really interesting. Like... I feel like my worldview has been changed now that I've seen this Rotom.
And all it does, it takes, the specs. It takes a pair of glasses to open up a...
Yeah, it's like Superman. Is that Clark Kent? No.
No, it's Rotom. It's Rotom Heat. But yeah, now we've got this Duraludon and Conkeldurr versus Gastrodon and Rotom Heat, and the fact that, like, we're mentioning the fact that James Evans, Gastrodon and Rotom Heat could win this. Oh, that was a nod from James, which means he guessed correctly there.
Grabbed the slot,
yeah. As Conkeldurr went for the Protect and Duraludon is taking that Overheat, which means it does take that -2 special attack, but the important thing is you got rid of that Duraludon, and now you are free to go after that Conkeldurr later.
Right, and I think Chris could still potentially win this game, but he would have to take a -2 Overheat and then knock out Rotom and then get enough HP back to take whatever Gastrodon wants to do. So I think this is James's game, but there are some outs here. Again, we're coming down to how much damage is Rotom doing?
With specs and at -2, and it's not quite enough. If he, that 9 though is still rough. I think if you can get, this is rough.
I think he's still gonna be knocked out.
Yeah, you will go for the Drain Punch onto the Gastrodon, and you are gonna have to take an Earth Power as well onto that Conkeldurr, and there's the Berry recovery.
Okay, so the Berry will seal it.
Ooh, that was actually a great adjustment from James then, because that Hitmontop just did so much for him against that Conkeldurr in the end.
The combination of Specs, Rotom, and Hitmontop, I feel were definitely what won the game for him there. And Hitmontop, not necessarily even because it was, doing anything active when it was on the field, so much as it was coming in, and was doing enough so that late game Conkeldurr wasn't really able to do its job, the way that it needed to. But that was a really good match. I think that Rotom is going to be actually really important. I would expect that James is going to try and construct a game plan around it for this next game as well.
Yeah, and I think earlier when James managed to set up that Misty Terrain, he was also preparing for that late game with Conkeldurr, right? Because now on Chris's end, he has to stall out turns to make sure that Misty Terrain is gone, so we can activate that Conkeldurr's Flame Orb. And again, like, that's just one of those weird interactions that it rolls over from previous generations, but you can't see it as much on the field, right? We're like, the terrains were very dominating visually in that previous generation, and now you're just like, okay, it's in the back, and you have to remember it.
Yeah, it's honestly tough to tell whether or not that Starfall was actually big brain, like expecting Conkeldurr in the back, or if it was just like a fortunate byproduct of the fact that it's Flame Orb Conkeldurr.
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
He was just trying to do fairy type damage. But either way, it did work out for him, and it was able to get him through, 2-3 turns of damage from Conkeldurr that would have been much greater was Flame Orb, active.
Yeah, I think, like, now, like you said, that Rotom is going to be the most important thing for Chris to figure out how to stop, right? Because it went from being like Chris knew and like kind of had this in the seat, and then James was like, no, Hitmontop and Rotom are going to win me this game, and they're going to set me up the way that they need to. So going into Game 3, your last top 4 to determine who is going into finals. We've got Chris Danzo versus James. This has been a really fun couple of matches. So we've got Togekiss and Rotom, so a throwback to that turn 1, but Togekiss and Hitmontop, which served James well in that game we just saw. Intimidate going into both Pokemon. not going to really matter for either Togekiss or that Rotom, but Hitmontop is going to be the key, I think, if that Conkeldurr is in the back for Chris still.
Yeah, and Hitmontop obviously doesn't like to see Togekiss very much, so if he does want to use that Hitmontop in much the same way that he used it in Game 2, he's going to have to be a little bit more careful. I think it was allowed a little bit more leeway in Game 2 because the Dynamax user was Duraludon instead of Togekiss, but given that Togekiss is on the field turn 1 here, we don't typically see Rotom, knowing that it has Nasty Plot, just go right for the Dynamax because you want to like try and spend a turn getting your Nasty Plot up. It seems like Chris is going to go back to Dynamax Togekiss here, which is obviously bad news for Hitmontop.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the most important turn 1 for both of them, like much like that Game 1 was, because that Hitmontop is probably going to have to get out of here for it to be any use, but actually that's no switch out, as Chris actually goes for, I think that's Chris's side. They have very similar avatars, but Chris going for the Dynamax is going to be that Togekiss. Oh, the Rotom.
Going into Rotom, okay.
Rotom wash. I'm eating my words immediately on that one.
Right, yeah, and it seems almost like, don't worry, I'll eat mine with you, as I was definitely expecting it to be Togekiss here, but it looks like Chris is just trying to take an advantage by catching a Fake Out. And if he does catch the Fake Out, it might give him, quite a bit of momentum based on what he chooses to do with Rotom, but it's definitely interesting to see that be the Dynamax.
And there's the Togekiss one more time from James here, so I think we might see a Max Starfall just to try to set up for later, or at least a Max Starfall within the next 3 turns, because you're going to try your best to make sure that Conkeldurr, that possibility in the back, right? Hitmontop going for the Fake Out, does go into the Rotom, yeah, so Chris was actually kind of looking for that as Max Geyser now. Fake Out is not going to affect this. Rotom is going to go into that Togekiss, going to bring down the rain, not doing that much damage onto Togekiss. But the important thing is at least he didn't get faked out, and now he has this his own Togekiss free to go for the attack, as actually James' Togekiss goes for Max Airstream into Chris's own Togekiss and gets the speed boost as well. This is what happens when you have the same Pokemon running around in the format a lot.
Yeah, this has been, kind of an interesting turn 1, and Dazzling Gleam is going to be the play from Togekiss here. It's pretty interesting just because you can see that both players are in each other's heads a little bit based on what's happened in the last couple games, and Chris going for the Dynamax Rotom was nice to catch the Fake Out right and it invalidated Hitmontop for a turn, but you wonder if it wasn't just a better play overall to allow Rotom to be faked out for turn 1 and be able to use your own Dynamax Togekiss.
Yeah, because now there's that Gastrodon on the field in place of that Hitmontop, as Togekiss on James' side goes for one more Max Airstream and picks up the knockout on Chris's Togekiss, gets another +1. Oh, there's a critical hit. Yep. That one actually might have mattered on that.
And he's weakness policy, right? So that's not just a Scopeled's Togekiss.
No. Yeah, they're both tough. Weakness policy, so that actually definitely mattered. But Togekiss is going to be at +2. Gastrodon's going to be at +1, but Max Lightning now from Chris's Rotom is going to go into Togekiss on James's, and that is a weakness policy activation as well. And now Togekiss is at +2 speed, so actually whatever Chris brings into this side of the field is going to have to take a +2 special attack.
Yeah, and we're getting into the territory of Game 3 looking a lot like Game 1, except in the other scenario where Togekiss is starting to get away from Chris a little bit here. It's threatening quite a bit of damage onto Rotom. It's the fastest thing on the field, so regardless of, what Chris tries to throw at it, usually if there were no speed boosts on the field, you could throw Arcanine in there, try and get a Snarl down, but instead this is a +2 speed, +2 special attack Togekiss, which is likely going to get just a free shot at the Arcanine slot, unless it's carrying something like Protect, and is going to do a lot of damage to the Rotom slot, even though it might not be able to quite knock it out with the Starfall.
Arcanine going for the Protect instead on this turn.
Okay, so it is carrying Protect, okay.
Yeah, it's going to try to make sure it doesn't get hit this turn, but Max Starfall now from Togekiss on that last turn going into Rotom, and it's going to set up that Misty Terrain. Everyone thought that they'd have to stop being afraid of fairies, getting +2 to special attack and speed, and now we have Togekiss here.
Here we are.
But that Arcanine is protecting
itself. That was a Xerneas reference.
It was a Xerneas reference. Thank you. But that Citrus Berry is at least going to help that Rotom stay around for one more turn, and allows it to get that Max Lightning off, and does knock out the Togekiss. But the important thing is that Togekiss set up that Misty Terrain. So, Max Lightning is actually going to bring back the Electric Terrain. Oh, Terrain interactions once more. The Togekiss is going to get knocked out on this turn. Arcanine is trusting himself, and now you just have to be careful of that Gastrodon.
Okay, yeah, so being able to kind of weather that last turn of Dynamax, I was wondering how much that Starfall was going to do, but Rotom being able to hang in there and take the knockout basically means that both Dynamaxes are ending at the same time here, and this is okay for Chris. I think I was afraid that it was going to start snowballing and we were going to see kind of a bloodbath like we did in Game 1 at the hands of a very happy Fairy, but instead we're going to be spared that. here in Game 3, and we come to what looks like a little bit more of a neutral position here, and Arcanine is going to get the opportunity to start dropping down some Snarls, I believe.
Yep, and there we go. That first Snarl here going into both Rotom and Gastrodon, going to knock down their special attack, but the rain is still up, so Gastrodon at least has the ability to go for those powered up Scalds, but Rotom is free to use that Nasty Plot on Chris's side, and that's going to be really tough to kind of take down. Now it gets that +2 to special attack, as Rotom now on James' side is going to actually not pick up that knockout. That is a little bit rough there, but Arcanine is going to take that Scald and is still hanging around and eats its berry. But now we know that that Rotom on Chris's side is at least faster, and it's now at +2.
Right. Yeah, that was another interesting turn, and Chris clearly knows his Calyx very well, as that was a very bold, nasty plot coming out from his own Rotom. But now we're going to get to see how much a Dark Pulse does, presumably, into Rotom Heat, or if he just switches Hitmontop into that slot. But another Snarl from Arcanine first.
Yeah, so those Snarls are going to put it at -2 for both Rotom and Gastrodon, which is actually probably why that Thunderbolt didn't knock out that Rotom, because it is back. We're assuming it's back. Yeah, that's about +2.
That
Ooh,
well.
That is, yeah. And we see James getting excited about that as he is able to pick up that knockout on Rotom, and then just another Scald onto Arcanine. Leaves whatever Pokemon is in the back left for Chris to take a Hitmontop, a Gastrodon, and a Rotom, which I don't think is going to be possible, regardless of what it is.
Yeah, I think that's going to be tough. I think it's probably Kinkeldurr based on the way that he's been, playing the entire set. And he does, kind of have things chipped into range here, and he is going to be able to get his Flame Orb immediately, but he's going to have to take a lot of attacks here. And even if he wants to do something like Protect to try and get his Flame Orb, the possibility of Hitmontop switching in, and we can just kind of get ourselves back into, mid to end game of Game 2, where we'll switch in Hitmontop.
Yep, switch in
Hitmontop, yep. And Hitmontop is going to take the field here.
Gets an Intimidate, and
if Rotom's not knocked out this turn, it will probably be switched out, and then we'll get to play the whole game. But it's just going to be a Thunderbolt first, which is not doing all that much damage.
It is at -2 thanks to those earlier Snarls, but Drain Punch is going to help bring back some of that HP. But, I mean, like, at this point, I think it's just, like, a matter of time, right?
I mean, stranger things have happened. I think because he has, Protect, he's able to at least stall out, one opportunity that he
can at least stop a Fake Out.
That James might have to gain some momentum by getting a free turn of Fake Out plus damage. But Rotom is going to be switched out here, and we're going to get to see James start to cycle. But, with Drain Punch, the Flame Orb boost is activated. Again, stranger things have happened.
Yeah. Well, there's a Kinkeldurr flinching because of that Fake Out, and Gastrodon is now on the field. So now it's a matter of, okay, you're going to switch out the Hitmontop for the Intimidate and go for, like, all this. So I think, yeah, like you said, like, Chris has a way out, but it's a matter of, I think, now figuring out your best flowchart plan and how do you stop the cycle of Intimidate and Fake Out. Oh, but just a close combat now from the Hitmontop into Kinkeldurr is going to drop that defense and special defense, but it might actually not enough. Oh,
yeah, it's going to be enough. Okay, so he'll get one knockout with Drain Punch. But I think that if this Gastrodon does have Recover, that there's not really an out. I think you'd be relying on Gastrodon not having some sort of recovery. And this is just going to put it in range for Rotom, if not knock it out. And there it is.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so Kinkeldurr gets knocked
Again,
out.
like, definitely not like a 100% lose endgame, I don't think. If you had gotten some crits here and there, because with Kinkeldurr's ability to heal itself back, it wasn't it wasn't.
There was a possibility that, like,
definitely
you
over. It was like highly likely that the 3v1 was going to happen, but you've seen some stranger things. That was a really exciting set. I liked that set a lot. You can kind of see. I think that Game 3 was a really good example of high-level play and some of the mind games that factor in, especially going into the Game 3 when you're deep in cut. And I think one of the things that's so interesting about that, and I've talked to certain players about this, is that you get away at certain times from running your team in an optimal way in favor of running your team in a way that's going to suit your opponent, like to go against your opponent.
You adjust your strategy that you usually have for your opponent. Yeah, and I think it's weird to me because I thought, like, in a format where, like, we have Dynamax possibilities, it's still amazing to see Togekiss be so dominant, like, as a Pokemon. Like, it's hard to stop consistently, I think, for some people.
Right.
And seeing both weakness policy and, like, trying to play around that, right? Like, like we said, like, game 1, 2, and 3 were kind of in a way where, like, okay, it really relied on Togekiss being sort of, like, the main Pokemon that had the ability to go for, okay, I'm going to Dynamax.
It's the main Pokemon. It is.
It's sorry, guys. It's the new Pokemon that everyone's going to use in until we get some format changes happening.
I don't want to talk about it.
We don't have to for a while. It's fine. But the important thing is, like, right now, like, Togekiss is just terrifying.
It's really good.
happy, and it will smile as it hits you with max starfalls and like up +2 attacks and goes for those air
smile
streams.
as it crits
as it
your
makes you
dreams
flinch.
away. Yeah, scary Pokemon.
Oh.
But yeah, that was a really exciting set, I think, and big congratulations to James, who is going to get himself into finals against Arbin here. We're going to see the matchup between two very different teams in the finals, with James running something that is very good stuffy with a lot of very common Pokemon, and Arbin really throwing the hard Trick Room down. So how well James is able to weather the hard Trick Room is going to be the story of our finals.
That was an okay weather pun.
I wasn't going for
okay, there was an emphasis on
it. It was just emphasis on the word weather. Is that okay with you, Regina?
No. All right. Anyway, guys, so we'll see you guys in finals in, like, I think right now.
Yeah, just a couple minutes,
we're just going to head into finals. So just don't go anywhere.